You're listening to Power Athlete Radio, a podcast dedicated to empowering your performance every damn day. Join former NFL pro and Power Athlete founder John Welborn as he dissects the greatest minds in strength, conditioning, and more. So whether your goal is to be the hammer, destroy mediocrity, or simply move the dirt, you've come to the right place. Now with the warm-up done, let the gains begin.
It's kind of a harrowing story. I mean, I think for anything that kind of is in like the cloud of like mental illness or anything which is outside, it's so hard to identify with that unless you've been through it. And I've seen so many guys that I've played with who have, since, dealt with so many different things that I was like, man, this is pretty interesting story, just for the fact that like trying to play in the NFL and manage all of that and manage what you had going on feels insurmountable.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those things. Just trying to keep my head on straight and trying to figure out what's going on. There's just chaos going all around, especially during the season. So just trying to figure out what all was going on. But, we got it figured out eventually, so that's what we could ask for.
Was there ever a point where you thought everybody else is crazy, I'm not crazy, this is totally normal? Or you thought like, oh man, something's up?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like one of those things, like it just felt very isolating. And, obviously I don't want to talk about like a lot of those things to people, like the things that are going on inside my head. Like, initially it just kind of started out with a lot of like guilt and depression, anxiety. Like I'd wake up in the morning and my heartbeat was going a million miles an hour. And it's just like, it was just that mental gymnastics in my mind at that point where it's like, if I can just start my day off right, which I didn't know how to manage my mind, manage my thoughts at that time. And, one thought would come to my head, it'd become a million different thoughts. And then, it just got to that point where it's like, I was trying to talk to someone about it, but they weren't quite understanding why I wasn't able to grasp the concept of a lot of things that they were trying to tell me. Because at the time, a lot of people that I was going to were, people in the religious setting, people of faith, and, they just say, pray about it more. And it's like, I think on my end that there's something wrong with me, spiritually, but at the same time, it's like, talking to someone that doesn't have OCD, they don't get it. And it's hard to make people understand. It's like stepping in someone's shoes. Like you really don't know what it's going to be like until you've actually gone through it. Like people that I've talked to that actually have OCD, they get in, ever since that article came out, like, there's a lot of people that are kind of like, I've had the same thing. I just never knew that there was a name for this type of thing. Because OCD, there's like different categories, and mine just happened to fall into the religious part of it. But yeah, there's definitely a time where I was just like, I'm the only one going through this. Why doesn't anyone else seem like they're going through this? And, it kind of creates that anger and that frustration, and also just like like, what am I going to do about this?
OCD is definitely an element. I can't speak on other professional sports, just within the NFL. And I know for me, at least, I had to be very conscious of not spinning out on like the OCD side, just for the fact that like you get into these little patterns and you get into these rituals, like how I got dressed on game day, the music I would listen to, what I would eat, and you kind of like start modeling this stuff like, hey, I played really well, I did these things, let me see if I can do these exact same things again and try to mimic it. And I found myself getting into a little bit of OCD where like, to the point where I would dress like the right side of my body and then the left. And then like, if I didn't play well, I would like, think like, oh man, last time I put my right shoe on, I put my left shoe on. And then sitting back and being like, whoa, this is spinning out. You're fucking crazy. And then talking to other people and seeing like other people's little rituals and patterns and realizing that like a lot of professional sports lends claim to that. And I don't know if it's mental illness or just that by following a pattern, it's one less thing to worry about. And that's how I kind of couched it. So, a big thing I always try to do on this podcast is a little bit of like empathy and trying to like understand, like what this individual is going through. So trying to like think about, I don't even down to uniforms. I would not play in a game in something I hadn't practiced in. So like whatever I practiced in, like for example, like whether it be a t-shirt in this, and I didn't change my deal, whether it was 105 degrees or if it was negative 40 degrees. And like, if I changed one little thing, I would like, man, is that going to be the difference between playing well and not playing well? Which sounds batshit crazy until you talk to other NFL players and like, oh, that totally makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely had that. And, that's kind of like this stage, because I've had OCD for a while, and, kind of looking back on a lot of things, like there's definitely a lot of themes that I didn't notice at the time because it was like a short period of time. Like maybe I had like this theme that I was worried about for a month, but, I've always had to definitely like, doing things a certain type of way, wearing certain types of things, tying my shoes a certain amount of times. But this year it kind of, obviously like it started into the theme of religion, like if I tape my fingers a certain amount of times, or if I taped it the wrong way, then my mind told me that if I didn't redo it, then I was going to burn in hell.
Oh,
yeah, it got pretty extreme. Like there'd be times on the field, like I think I've talked about this before, but it'd be like a 2-minute drill. My mind would be like, you can win this game. You can play this perfect game at, not give up a sack, not give up a pressure, be flawless, but you got to sell your soul to the devil. Those would be the things that kind of creep into my mind. But yeah, everything religion based, like,
oh my God.
I think it was a constant battle of not going to hell, not offending God, not serving the devil, that type of stuff. And
well,
it got pretty intense.
And then like the NFL is a weird landscape, and I've tried to explain this to people, and I don't think they understand it unless you've been through it, where there's a lot of like, let me see, I couch this and not sound like a complete fucking asshole, but I've always believed just be authentic, be who you want to be. Like I'm not a big fan of deception. And like, if you're a scumbag and you want to do and like run the streets and do all that crazy shit, like go do it. But like, don't pretend, like don't show up to Bible study walking around with a bunch of religious tattoos and a big, $1 million, diamond cross around your neck, and all of a sudden start preaching scripture and whatnot. And yet, all of a sudden you get arrested in the strip club or with like prostitutes or something. So like that was always really weird for me, especially in the NFL, was a lot of guys put up this veneer of like who they wanted to be and then live this like kind of dark existence on the backside. And I was like, dude, that to me was a lot worse than people that were like, hey, I'm going to go out and drink. I'm going to go out and do all these, just basically be a piece of shit. And I would much rather deal with those people than the people that were the deception. And I felt like, because in situations where you went to go play in the game, like if they weren't honest with themselves as who they were, like how can you really trust them to play and do the job that you needed them to do? So that was kind of like where I extended that. And I can only imagine, being around those individuals, and you're probably like, oh my God, if we win this game and these guys suck. I mean, like it feels like an endless pit. Like you just start spiraling out and not knowing how to recover from it. We interrupt this episode with a shameless self-promotion. Are you a field or court sport athlete looking to dominate the leaderboard? Let me introduce you to Field Strong. Take your inner athlete to the next level by exposing yourself to the advanced training techniques that contributed to my 10 years in the NFL. Unlock pinnacle performance and level up your athletic potential today. Head to powerathletehq.com/fieldstrong and claim your 7-day free trial. Now back to the show.
Yeah, I mean, with my OCD, obviously, it turned me into, I was so deep into the rabbit hole that I couldn't see myself for what I was kind of becoming. I was really the opposite of what, faith really preaches, and, becoming very judgmental of others. And, it's kind of left me with a little bit of like resentment of everything that happened last year. Obviously, like, I've talked about before, I have God over here, and then I have my OCD God. Essentially last year I was worshiping the OCD God because this version was basically the worst version of God you could possibly think of. Like, it's kind of like the old school teachers, like smacking a ruler against their hand, basically like saying you mess up. Like,
so Old Testament God versus New Testament God.
only worse because there was no room for error. Like one bad thought pops in your mind, like I had to correct it. Like, and that's where like the kind of the compulsions came in. But, I was just, you talk about kind of like the people around me, but honestly, I didn't even notice the people around me because I was so in my own head. Like I was just kind of a shell, and I kind of talk about it being like the sunken place in my own head, kind of like in the movie Get Out, where I'm really not even there. Like something else is there, kind of just driving me on autopilot. Like I was completely separate from the game. Like I had no desire to play last year. I had no desire to have any type of relationship with people because I was living this false reality, all these false perceptions in my head that, you know, I was just essentially just a zombie walking around,
Wow.
Constantly fighting for my survival every second of my day. Like if I mess up, then I'm going to hell. And, my mind took that every which direction you could possibly think of. And it was just overwhelming. And it's just like, it's kind of like one of those places where I got to the point where it's like, I don't really want to be alive, but I also don't want to die. So it's kind of like that. It was almost kind of like a prison for me. Like there was no good side. There was no good alternative. And it was just miserable until, I was actually able to break past that wall. And, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but, yeah, it was long, just not even because I just had a newborn son that year too. And I didn't really even get to enjoy those months. And that really sucked. I have a really loving wife. Didn't get to enjoy her. It was just, yeah, I was living in my own prison inside my head. Essentially, I did go to hell because I was living in hell inside my own.
This episode of Power Athlete Radio is powered by Train Heroic, the most immersive strength training app experience on the market. We've built an online training business by partnering with Train Heroic to deliver all of our world-class training programs like Jack Street, Hammer, Field Strong, and Grindstone. To learn which Power Athlete training program best suits your goals, head to powerathletehq.com/training. And if you're a coach looking to build a business with the best training tech in the business, head to trainheroic.com/powerathletehq. And now back to the show. Did you grow up religious? I mean, did you grow up in the church or were Catholic, born again, Protestant, any of that?
I wouldn't say I was probably the checking the boxes Christian, show up to church, I'm good with God. Living by works. I didn't take my faith very seriously until last year, which is when I, as an athlete, when you set your mind to something, like you're going all in, I went all in on my faith and, I'm searching, like trying to find my way as a man of faith. And that was really difficult for me because I didn't know the correct route to go. And, that's kind of like the journey of life. Like you kind of have to step in some different areas in order to find your way. And that was kind of difficult for me because I was looking for assurance, looking for the right way. And everyone has a different way. That's why there's so many different denominations. And think about faith is there's no definite answer. And my OCD was always looking for that definite answer. Like, do I get the thumbs up? Am I good? Like, am I doing something right? Am I doing something wrong? And one of the worst things I possibly did was, going online, going to a Reddit page, like looking for answers.
Yeah, don't do that.
I could find all the right answers, and I'd find this one dude just sent me down this terrible like rabbit hole, and it was not good.
I want to pivot for a little bit. Like, how did football first come in the picture? Like, growing up for you, like, where'd you grow up? How did football first kind of come into focus, and then obviously get to the position you're at?
Yeah. So I started playing flag football, I think second or third grade, and then fourth grade. That's when I started playing tackle football. But I just really had like a love of the game. I just like the aggression side, the competitive part. Just a boy just got all this energy. Just want to go bash some heads in and stuff like that. And that was really just kind of the appealing part. Like there is no really limit to it. I mean, my dad played football in college, so I kind of got raised up in it a little bit. But always been something I've been very passionate about, and just that competitive nature of football has always been appealing to me.
Did you have any like early mentors or like early experiences that kind of shaped the mindset and like kind of set that work ethic? Because, obviously it's a long journey, and I don't think people necessarily understand how long the journey takes, especially when you get to the NFL. Like for me, I didn't start playing football till I got to high school, and then, obviously college, and then, you go on and get drafted, and then next thing you know, you play a bunch of years in the NFL. But I wonder if there was any pivotal moments that kind of shaped that early on.
Yeah, I definitely think like my dad was the one that really kind of shaped my work ethic. I mean, he introduced me to like working out when I was 10 years old. He never forced me to ever work out, but it was just something like, I wanted to get stronger, and, that was the way to do it. And, he just kind of like showed me the right way to work, working out. And, I just kind of eventually just took that under my own responsibility and started doing that myself, and, started going down like 4 or 5 days a week into my basement and just like working out. And I loved it. But yeah, my dad has always been like my mentor and teaching me how to, work, have my work ethic, and, show me what it took to become successful. And I wouldn't be here without what he taught me, because he taught me from a very young age, like, you can be with the crowd, you can do what everyone else is doing, but you're not going to get to where you want to be.
So then obviously you get drafted, come in the NFL, and you started as a rookie.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I started week 5, so it was like a Thursday night game. It took 3 right tackles to go down for me to be able to get my first start. And I was drafted as a guard. I was practicing at guard pretty much the entirety of the time, and I played a little bit of tackle during camp. But yeah, I was just kind of like, all right, New England Patriots we're going to New England. Get some walkthrough reps, and you'll be good. I don't know if anyone knew that I was going to have any type of success or not, but it's kind of like, we started out the season like 1-5, so it's not like we were making any big runs at the time. So I guess it was like, see what happens, and start that night. And year 8, I'm still the right tackle. So I mean, have been blessed and fortunate enough to have the success I've had, and a lot of people have brought me up along the way.
Yeah. Any major injuries or anything that you've dealt with?
I dealt with some really bad patellar tendonitis my 6th year, and it was partially torn about halfway through the season. Like, it was just something that got really bad, progressively got worse, and yeah, it just needed surgery at the end of the season to kind of clean it up. And yeah, the knees have always been kind of since year 5, kind of been kind of a struggle. Just a lot of tendonitis in the patellas and in the quad tendons, and just something you got to do. You got to be able to bend, and that was a struggle for me. I mean, I've torn my plantar fascia. My 4th year was out 6 weeks with that, but honestly, like, I've been very fortunate and haven't had really any major physical injuries. Just things that are just kind of nagging, and just got to play through them for the most part.
Yeah, my rookie year, I came in and started, and then I ruptured my patellar tendon. I mean, fucking complete rupture, and they stitched that thing back. And but yeah, I dealt with patellar tendonitis. It ends up coming on if I have like any kind of weakness or kind of anything's going on in my hamstrings. So like the hamstring doesn't stabilize, the knee tends to have a little bit of issue. So I know if like the tendonitis comes up, I do a bunch of glute stuff, and it seems to work pretty well in terms of getting rid of it.
Yeah, I definitely started for kind of focusing on that for the longest time. Like, people are like, oh, you got to get your quad strong. Like, that'll help your
nah.
So I'd be on the freaking leg extension machine and stuff like that. And, last year when I started really kind of focusing on like the glutes and hamstrings, like I don't do any squats anymore or anything like that. Like I'll get like single leg stuff, but putting on a bar on my back or anything like that, it's like a no-go for me. Plus I had some back issues like my junior year in college where, I had the L4, L5 bulging disc and had a drop foot for about 3 or 4 months. And that was not fun to deal with. But luckily, that's gone away with some good core work, good stabilization stuff.
So as you, I mean, obviously you're going into your 8th year. It's kind of interesting. Like, was there like a moment that kind of pivoted into this? I mean, like, it's such a fascinating tale to me. The fact that like here you are, almost 30 years old, and have this NFL career, and you go on, and like it was like, hey, you know what? I want to try to dial in more on my faith, and then this ends up kind of manifesting. And then obviously you kind of go through this last season, and then I thought the fascinating one was the Ibogaine, because we've had a bunch of different SEALs, Doc Parsley, who's a good friend of mine here. He's a former SEAL, was a medical doc, and has taken a bunch of SEALs down to Mexico to do the Ibogaine, who were kind of like, this was their last hope. I mean, suicidal, drugs, the whole deal. And like the result from the Ibogaine has been pretty amazing. We had a guy on the podcast that was like, if this didn't work, it was basically a gun in my mouth. And I went down there and did this treatment, and it completely gave his whole life back.
Yeah, that was definitely kind of my posture with it. It was kind of the last ditch effort, because I missed the last 5 games of the season last year because I went to a mental health facility in Colorado. Was there for 48 days, and I really didn't get too much out of it. I was marginally better. It gave me time to really kind of like slow down and kind of focus on what my true enemy was. Like, I had better awareness of what my OCD was. I could put it down on paper. Like, I could say like, oh, okay, this is OCD. These are the tendencies, but I was still there's still that block that I couldn't quite get through, like this block in my mind with it actually like resonating through my entire being. It's one thing to conceptualize, it's another thing to internalize and really believe something. And so I'll go to Tijuana, Mexico. It's a 5-day treatment. And my father-in-law is actually the one who found out about it. And then my wife was like, all right, like, this is something we should seriously consider. I was kind of like thinking about it, like, oh, go to Mexico and do psychedelics. Like, take the OCD into it. And I'm like imagining like this shack in like some random part of Mexico, here Tijuana. It's like, man, like this could be really bad. Like, I'm not going to do that.
Like, you look over and see Aaron Rodgers in the next teepee.
Yeah, I was thinking even something worse, just because I heard some interesting stories while I was in rehab too about one dude got assaulted while he was like doing it. And I was like, oh boy, like, not this treatment, but he was doing something else in like Costa Rica or something like that. So I was like, man, like, I don't know. And the way he kind of described his experience was really kind of like literally just like a shack in the jungle or something like that. But actually, when I was in rehab, when I extended, I was only supposed to be there 30 days, and I extended an extra 18. And when I extended, there was a veteran who actually started talking to me about Ibogaine, and he mentioned the place Ambio Life and told me that was the best place to go. And we were looking into different places because, I mean, obviously, like, you don't know what the best place is because that stuff really, it's overseas. It's not approved in the U.S. It's very much kind of taboo right now, and hopefully it won't be soon because, I mean, I got some really good benefits. Not benefits, it was life-changing things happen from it. But he told me about his experience, and so the way they set up the treatment, like I said, 5 days. You go in the first day, you do like a sweat lodge. Second day, you do the Ibogaine. Then the third day is a gray day, which is kind of like your recovery day, and that day really sucks. But then the next day, after that, the fourth day, you do something called 5-MeO DMT. Mm-hmm. And I think the Ibogaine and the 5-MeO work perfectly together for me because the Ibogaine, they say, is kind of like the refinement. It's basically that sledgehammer that breaks apart that, let's say you're like a puzzle that's been put together the wrong way. Like some kid has come and smashed the pieces together so they do fit. And that's kind of like how our brains kind of like stuck together. It's put together the wrong way. You think about people with addictions, people with PTSD, like people with OCD, like our brains are wired the wrong way. Like we got these pathways that are going to places they shouldn't, things that are on those neurons that shouldn't be there. Breaks that all apart. puts it back to the factory default. And for me, my experience on it wasn't very intense in terms of like the guy I was talking about who introduced me to it. His experience. So he was an interrogator in the military, and his experience was very intense. A 28-hour experience with some pretty bad stuff that he had to confront. But and he was ready to like end it all after that experience. He's like, man, this is terrible. Like, y'all did this to me. And then he does the 5-MeO a couple of days later, and it really pieced everything together for him and really changed his life. Like, when he talks about his story, like, he cries like tears of joy every time, and it's pretty like amazing. You can see it in his eyes. Like, it gave him his life back. And for me, the Ibogaine kind of did something similar. Like, I didn't have a crazy experience, but it really does detox you physically, mentally, and spiritually. Like, my left foot was like twitching the entire night, so something was going on there in my brain. But you can just feel like this chill go down through your spine. Dry heaving all night, you know. There was some crazy stuff going on, but and one of the side effects is your body goes ataxic. So the next day you wake up, you feel like you're a toddler learning to walk for the first time. Like, that's how much it's kind of like rewiring everything in your brain, you know. Kind of gives you that blank slate again. And thing about the Ibogaine, I think, is important for people to also know is that it's not a cure, but it gives you the ability to cure yourself, which is important because once you leave, you get probably about 3 months where you're just riding high, like above the clouds. Like, you feel great, you feel like you can conquer anything. And I think that can be dangerous for a lot of people because they think they're cured and they don't do anything. For me, like, luckily, like, I had a good plan set in place that, you know, once I got out of it, you know, I was in the IOP for 2 weeks, 3 hours a day getting OCD therapy. Like, I was in it hard, and, you know, it's kind of like I began to open all those doors in my mind, and it was up to me to explore them and, you know, create good habits, you know, use different tools that are given to me and apply everything that I can now actually internalize versus conceptualize. And kind of going back to the treatment, you know, on the gray day, that was kind of one of those days that was really tough for me. I was like, I made a mistake coming here. And then the next day, I was worried about doing the 5-MeO DMT because, again, you hear different stories about it, and usually most of the bad stories are from people that use it in a very, whatchamacallit, just not a very good setting, you know, just using it at a party on the street or something like that. And, you know, it's not a good setting for it. Using it recreationally is what I'm trying to say. But
so you're not having parties, inviting people over for a little 5-0 DMT party, like Joe Rogan style?
No, it's crazy because one of my friends, he said he actually got some, like, he's got vaporized in a cartridge. I'm like, dude, like, he's going to microdose it, which I don't understand how you microdose that because it is vaporized, but, you know, to each his own. But
yeah, the way the way Parsley described it, it was like ayahuasca is the mother, Ibogaine's the father, and it kind of like strips everything away. And then when they did the 5-MeO and DMT, it kind of reprogrammed it, kind of like you were this blank slate, and it went back and recreated, is the way he described it. He actually went through the therapy just to test it. And I asked him, like, you know, how'd you go? And he's like, you know, he wasn't very descriptive. He was just like, yeah, it was intense. I was like waiting. I was like, you know, I don't know. I always imagine, I don't know what really, I mean, like, so earlier was it last year or 2 years ago, we did a podcast with the guys from Rhythmia, which is the place down in Costa Rica that does the ayahuasca thing. I think that's where Aaron Rodgers went. And they invited us to go. And I kind of reluctantly agreed to. And then my wife ended up getting diagnosed with breast cancer. And I ended up not going, which I think is kind of funny that her breast cancer probably saved me from going to do that, just for the fact that those guys, my friends that went down there was a lot of vomiting. And I don't like to throw up. Like, I've never thrown up. Like, I don't like to throw up. Every time I throw up, I feel like I break a rib. So as soon as they were talking about, they're like, yeah, we couldn't stop throwing up, I was like, oh, thank God I didn't go.
Yeah, you're right about the vomiting part. Like, they have you fast before you do any of these. But yeah, I began like I was, dry heaving. I dry heave about 4 times and very, very violently. It's like there's nothing in there, but they kind of say it's like cleansing out all the bad energy. You're purging out bad energy. But and then my gray day, like I couldn't eat anything during that time either. I had a quarter of a blueberry smoothie, and it was funny because I was sitting on a swing set on the side of the house that we were doing the treatment in, and the host was kind of out like consoling me because obviously it was a tough day for me. In the middle of the conversation, like I just let loose of all that blueberry smoothie right in front of her. I'm like, is this normal? Does this happen a lot? And yeah, it was kind of embarrassing. But yeah, the way he kind of describes like the 5-MeO, that's one of those experiences where it's very hard to describe, and I describe it a lot to people the best I can, and that's probably only about 1% of the way because you know it kind of is like we're living in the matrix, and then that kind of shows you what reality really is when you go into that space because the 5-MeO it's only 15 to 20 minutes, so it's very short but very intense because they talk about ayahuasca DMT that lasts 4 hours maybe, and they say that's kind of like working your way up the mountain. 5-MeO, you go straight to the top of the mountain, and then you teleport to the heavens. Essentially, it's a pretty crazy experience. And the one thing when I went into it, because you smoke it, and it's kind of really surreal how you go into it because so they have mattresses all over the ground, and you're sitting on those mattresses, sitting upright. So you inhale for 10 seconds and then you hold for 10 seconds, and they tell you to kind of ball up like you're about to do a cannonball, tensing up all your muscles so that when you release on the count of 10, you fall back and you're just in this relaxed state and you're kind of just like in it just like that. I had to do it twice because I didn't know what it was going to be like. And my first time I didn't get there. And second time, there's no doubt that I achieved that, what they call an ego death.
Yeah.
Because you lose all sense of self, like your identity's gone. Like, they call it, it's basically a near death experience for most people because they talk about DMT being released in the brain twice in your lifetime.
Yeah.
Once when you're born and once when you die.
Sure.
So for me, like, it was very uncomfortable in terms of not that I was seeing something crazy. I really didn't have visuals except for like when I first went into it. And it wasn't like I saw things. It was more kind of like, there's like lots of prisms, like lots of things just kind of like coming together, I guess you could say, is kind of like all your senses are just becoming one. And that's kind of like the mending process.
Yeah.
But it was very uncomfortable because, really wanted to have control. And when you're in that realm, you have no control. And, the people there were really great. And, they were like touching me on the hand, like telling me to remember to breathe and reminding me it was just the medicine. So I was just like, all right, like, I'm just going to let this happen. I'm just going to let it take me to wherever it wants to take me. And when I did that, that's when I was able to kind of let the medicine really heal me in a way. It was a very spiritual experience for me because, I mean, you're laying there completely paralyzed because your mind thinks that your body is dead and consciousness is just leaving the body, so you can't move at all. But, a lot of spiritual things happen. Like there was a point where it seemed like I was being exorcised of something really bad inside of me. And, this purge was happening, and it was the strongest, deepest, like my soul was being purged of like something bad, and it was pretty intense and very spiritual. And I have no doubt that for me, like, it was an encounter with God, and it felt very holy because when that happened, like I shot up And it was just like something was being driven out to me, because at that time I literally called on God, and that's when all this stuff started to happen. And after that purge, like I fell back onto the mattresses. Light was just all around me. It was just like perfection. Like it was just so pure, so holy. And to me, it felt like there was just this comfort that overcame me. Like I felt like I was in the arms of God, essentially. That's what it felt like. Like I could just, something very spiritual about it, like just the feeling in my entire body. And there was this internal intuition about what was going on, because like I said, it's not so much what you see, it's what all your senses just becoming one. And I don't know, but it was just very pure. And kind of going into a biblical reference, I think about a lot of things that happened during the 5-MeO. Like they talk about the Bible, like receiving the kingdom of God like a child. Like that childlike surrender just happened to me. And they talk about a lot about inner child work. Like all my identity, all the cares of the world were stripped away, and it was just like that little kid inside of me that was just helpless. I felt like that was the part of me that was like calling out to God, was the child inside of me. And that's why I was able to have that experience, because I was just able to let go and let whatever was going to happen. And then I get to the perfect love, cast out all fear. Like after I did the 5-MeO, my anxiety and fear and depression were just gone. Like I was 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, like across the board on anxiety, depression, fear. Like I was in a bad, bad spot. And after that, like it was just like this cloud, this darkness was just removed from my life. Like I had the clarity. I, it just felt like almost like that spiritual detox I was talking about. And all these doors were opened up into my mind. So it was no longer bound to be so rigid and narrow, but I question different things now that people say I'm not allowed to question. People, I am able to, I just have all these ideas, all these different things that weren't once there. I just feel like anything is possible now. Like the possibilities with God are endless, and it's all good stuff. And, I have this, I feel like I've been given like a skill and a tool, like how to master my own mind. And, it's been pretty cool, like learning these different things and just being open minded to all different teachings, really, because I feel like it all, at the end, like we're all connected to God. And this really kind of showed me to that, different perspective on life after that experience.
So how do you balance this with football? You think about like the anger, the aggression, like the violence. How do you kind of channel like what you've learned on this side to be able to kind of weaponize yourself on the other side and be able to do this job?
Honestly, like I just have so much more joy and energy now. Like being out there, like I feel like a little kid again, like I have that joy, that excitement to go out there and just be competitive. And honestly, it's like I'm kind of giving a middle finger to my OCD every time I go out there, and I'm like just doing what I was created to do. I've been given these talents, and what a damn shame would it be for me to not maximize those. And all like the anger and the hate just comes from like towards my OCD, but now I can just kind of like laugh at it honestly. Like I don't give away my energy freely anymore. Like I just do it because I just love playing football now, and it's not because I'm trying to do things for any other type of reason except for just my enjoyment and my excitement. And, it's just great just to be alive again, be present. That's something I learned too, is just mindfulness and being in the present moment. Like I never realized how much before, like, just getting stuck in thought, even if it wasn't like the OCD stuff, like just getting stuck in types of thoughts on stuff that just don't matter. Like I find myself a lot of times, I have this recognition now, like I'll play out these scenarios in my head, that these scenarios that go wrong, and I just start getting angry, like assuming the worst of people, assuming the worst of myself. I'm like, why do I do that? Why do I waste my energy on that? And getting lost in things like that when I can just be present in the moment, be present in reality, because everything that we think in our minds, it's not even reality. It's not even real.
Yeah. What's the age old? Like we die 1,000 deaths before we ever die our real death.
Yeah, 100%. So it's just like, I'm just going to live in the present moment, and, whatever happens, happens. Could be good, could be bad, but, I'm going to live it right now versus anticipating it.
Yeah. Once you left it and like obviously like left the facility, you said you went to, was it some like inpatient, outpatient type stuff or based on OCD?
Yeah, it was outpatient. So we went back to Alabama, which is where my wife's from and where we'll end up moving when I'm done playing football. But we have some land out there, just peaceful, just kind of nice, and kind of gave me a chance to kind of recenter myself, block out all the noise, get off social media, get away from all the noise, and just kind of like center back into myself. It's kind of that self exploration. And yeah, I was, for 2 weeks, 3 hours a day, just hitting it hard. And, it wasn't like immediate, like even to this day, I'm still kind of like learning new things. And, each week has gotten better and better. It's kind of like one of those things like you will kind of get immediate results, but it's like, keep putting in the work like anything. I mean, you have to be very intentional every day. And there's no days off. Like if I want to have the quality of life that I have now in terms of like my mental health, like I have to be very intentional, diligent, the same way like I'm training my body to be ready on the field. Like I need to be able to train my mind and put these skills into practice, because like, you take 2 weeks off and you're trying to play a game or something, it's not going to go so well. It's the same thing with your mind. And having that mind body connection, I realize how important it is, because one fails, the other fails. So just having that balance and that harmony between both has been really key. And I've even, we've only been through OTAs, but I still just notice it in my energy. And like, honestly, I think how I think really affects how I move and how everything in my body works together. And I've really noticed it. And, I can feel those effects.
Well, it's got to be like a huge weight's been lifted off of you. I mean, the fact that you're fighting these like internal battles, this like damnation versus, I mean, like the internal monologue must have been so overwhelming that going out and like having to like, process information and deal with that just probably felt very overwhelming. Like there was just a huge weight on you at all times. I mean, I can't imagine run up to line, going in there and like listening to calls, trying to do this and then deal with all this other stuff going on in the back of your head. I mean, the one thing I did really well was I was able to like clear my mind and like, be 100% present in the moment. And like to the point where actually I looked forward to playing for the fact that I didn't have to think about anything else. And like the cares of the world just kind of melted away. Everything got real quiet. The only sad part is then one day you don't get to play anymore. And it's really hard to find that again.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I just try to think about, not being present in the moment. Just like I said, I was just kind of like in that sunken place. And, last year, like completely did not care about playing football, wasn't in it at all. Like I remember like I would literally just watch film like maybe the night before. Like I was just so out of it. Like it was crazy like that I didn't get hurt majorly last year because I was not in tune. And remember at some point, because I got put on some antidepressants like few games before you, like I got checked into that mental health facility, and I was on benzos. And I remember like taking like half a tablet of those before games just because like I had to like calm down my mind, and the anxiety was just so crazy. But I was essentially, it felt like I was drunk on the field sometimes, and that was really bad. And that's kind of like the point where it's like, all right, we need to do something about this, because can't be doing that. You got that intense. But yeah, just being able to have that presentfulness has been huge.
Hmm. So now that you feel like you're like yourself, when you go out and you train and you kind of do everything, is it something where like, your wife and the people around you have like noticed a massive change? I mean, obviously you're doing a lot of internal work. I just wondered, like, externally, the people that know you have observed like a massive change, like, or were you just really good at compartmentalizing and kind of hiding it?
Yeah, like when it was going on, like it was so internal, like all the compulsions were internal, but I mean, you could definitely see it on my face last year. I mean, my wife had firsthand, like, I would always go for her for reassurance on certain things. Like I'd be saying the same things over and over, having her reassure me. And it'd just be like these different things that come into my mind. But on the people on the outside, like a lot of people just didn't know what was going on because, I mean, how do you talk to anyone about these types of things? Like they're not going to understand unless they are actually in your shoes.
Yeah.
And that was really hard, but luckily, it was kind of a godsend. But last year, someone on our practice squad, I started talking to him a little bit, and I found out he also had scrupulosity, and we started talking. So that was kind of like a little beam of light, kind of hope at the end of the tunnel. And so that kind of kept me going, and it's kind of nice to have someone that kind of related to me on that aspect, and I was able to play off that a little bit. But other than that, like it was just really tough because, again, like no one truly understood. But I definitely think people see it now. I mean, one of the guys I do body work with, like I've kind of talked to him about everything. He's kind of seen it from an outside perspective for a while because I worked with him last year too, and working with him now. He says like stuff like I'm faster to respond. Like he doesn't feel any tension in my body compared to like last year. People have said like they can actually like see my eyes now versus like last year, just kind of being in that, that depressive state where it's like there's a body there, but there's no one behind those eyes.
Yeah.
And it's been 9 days with me and my wife. And, when you're going through it, you're not grateful for the trial that you go through, but going through it now, like on the other side of it, like I'm honestly grateful that I had that experience. It wasn't easy. It wasn't fun and got really dark during times, but I've become such a better man because of it. I have greater self-introspection, self-awareness, and it's shown me, I feel like we almost have to go through those dark times because we're all going to go through dark times in our lives. And it's kind of like how you respond to it, because without that dark time, like you have to see both in order to appreciate the other, because without the darkness, there is no light. So going through that, like I appreciate things a lot more. I have a different perspective. Like I got a whole lot of perspective in Colorado. Like some of the stories I heard from people, like you think our problems are bad, like people got some serious stuff going on in their life, and it just shows you, man, like, we're just here for a short time. Like there's no point in not loving one another and just like being in harmony with one another. We're all connected in one way or another, and like our problems are so much smaller compared to this whole world,
Yeah, the interesting thing you brought up was about the DMT, releasing twice. I kind of got stuck down, or not stuck, but I kind of went down that road a little bit, anticipation of going and doing this ayahuasca thing that I ended up not doing. But I read a book called the Immortality Key. We've talked about it on this podcast, and it really got into like some like early Christian mysticism and the fact that there was like a huge psychedelic component to Christianity early on. And the guy went and like looked at like the Temple of Eleusis, and there was definitely something within like the sacrament that was connecting people on some, whether it be something psychedelic or whatnot. And so the way that the book came about was they did, I think it was at Duke University, they gave people kind of a heroic dose of psilocybin that were in stage 4 cancer. And then they interviewed them, and the people's acceptance of death and like, the idea that we're connected, and a lot of the kind of the experiences these people gave while under the influence of psilocybin was like identical to the writings of the early Christian mystics. And that was the connection that this guy ended up writing this book about, the immortality key. And it was extremely helpful for me. I mean, just for the fact that, like, you know, when I would go to church as a kid and I would sit there, I would kind of like look around and be like, I don't really feel it. I don't really understand it. Like, how come like I want to feel what these people are feeling? Like, I'd see, you know, people like it, you know, feel that God was filling them in some way. And I kind of was like looking around and I'm like, I just don't get it. And so as I read that book, it made a lot of sense to me. I was like, oh, because he said the exact same thing. Like, I went to church as a kid, and, you know, I've tried my entire life and it just never really connected on it. So I think the experience that you went through probably would be beneficial for a lot of NFL players at the ending of their careers, for the fact that probably a lot of scrambling of the brain from using your head as a battering ram, a lot of the the pressures of doing the job that most people don't realize, you know, like just being able to navigate it. And I think when you retire, all of a sudden, a lot of these, you know, things that people were able to kind of sweep under the rug or maybe deal with, you know, come to light. And a lot of guys have issues, and the way they deal with it is through drugs and alcohol and medication and, you know, porn and all these other, you know, fucking whatever else they get themselves into, and they use it as a coping mechanism. And I think what you went through is pretty interesting, for the mere fact that probably a lot of people could kind of benefit from this, kind of stripping away that death of you know, the ego death, and then realizing that, like, you know, we're here for a function, and the sooner we figure it out, the better we are. And I have to have something to live for, much more than just, you know, like you said, you know, posting on social media and fucking going to the next club.
Yeah, just kind of like you're talking about also with, like, you know, the TBIs, like, this is so good for that. And there's a lot of teammates, like, I've talked to, and, like, you don't even really need to wait until after you're done playing. Like, get on top of this now, because, you know, football, we're distracted in the moment. There's so much going on. You don't have time to sit and think. And last year, I think it was having that time. My son was born. We weren't traveling around. I was injured. You know, I had that time to think, and that's when all these things start to come up. Like, my past was coming up. Like, you know, contemplating, like, the rest of my life. You know, thinking about, you know, thinking of God, taking my faith more seriously. Like, there's going to be things that come up for a lot of guys when they're done playing that they don't realize now. And my wife was always kind of like saying she was worried about when I got done playing, like, how it was going to be. And, you know, everyone says this, it's like, oh, I'll be good. Like, I've got it figured out. But honestly, like, no matter how old you get, you really don't have it figured out. Like,
no, I was going to say, anybody that says that's full of shit. Like, if you figure like you got it figured out, like, unless you're, you know, Tony Gonzalez and you get to play 17 years and you get some, you know, spot on the sports desk. And then I see Tony standing up next to Bezos at his wedding. So, I mean, there's very few people that, like, get that type of storybook deal. But I think for a lot of guys, because, like, whether it be the TBIs or maybe they're just maybe listen, well, I think it's twofold. I think when you're a high level athlete at a young age, a lot of people will make exceptions for you, and they will not hold you to the standard at which they should hold other people. So because you're a high level athlete and you're good in this, like, people will kind of help you along. You know, maybe your grades aren't as good, or maybe you have some behavioral issues, or like, they're able to kind of couch it and be like, oh, he's a great athlete. And you'll kind of get this, like, preferential treatment through life. And then you get to the NFL, and, you know, let's say you're an incomplete person and you don't know, you know, basic social graces on, like, you know, if somebody calls you to, like, you know, return a phone call, which, or just how to treat people. And I think people make a lot of excuses because you're a professional athlete and you play at a high level, and they realize, like, oh, this guy's so good, he's probably deficient. And then you retire and realize that that excuse doesn't work anymore, that you have to be a real person. You can't be a fucking cartoon character. And I think that's something I've noticed with a lot of, like, my former teammates who were kind of incomplete humans. Once they retired, like, people stopped making exceptions for them. They stopped being like, oh, it's okay, we'll sweep it under the rug. And so I think something like what you went through, whether it be, you know, Ibogaine, pretty intense, you know, psilocybin, or let's say you want to go do ayahuasca or something. I mean, something that allows you to kind of view yourself from the outside. I think that's what's so powerful about it, is you get to kind of, like, step away almost out of your own body and view yourself, which I think is extremely helpful for if you can view yourself on how other people view you, that's a great indicator for, helping you become a better version of yourself.
100%. I mean, kind of that lifting of the veil, because I mean, you take a step back from all of it, like you said, like, everyone's kind of putting athletes on a pedestal, and I think the platform is great because when these types of things happen, like, we can help people, but a lot of time that platform is not used well, and I didn't use it well for my first 7 years, really. I mean, not that I abused it, but I mean, I could have definitely used it for a lot better things. But yeah, it's just like one of those things I feel like everyone really needs, whether you're an athlete or not, is to be able to kind of see things for what they are, because in the busyness of life, like, you're not going to be able to truly see that until you like take a step back and you just think about I guess you think about all the hippies in like the 70s, maybe they had it right, all of them were just happy and
yeah, no, I agree. Maybe people figured it out. I mean, as advanced as we think we are, and this is something I wrestle with all the time. I'm older than you, so I'm from a kind of an interesting generational kind of piece, in that I remember what it was like to not have computers, not have cell phones, something, I got 3 kids, and something I was talking to my daughters about. I'm like, you guys have zero phone etiquette. We had one phone in the house. It rang and you had to like answer it and be like, hello, Wellborn residents, and like write down messages, or my parents would get pissed because we didn't have an answering machine. And like, so I'll call them on the phone and they'll like, won't even say anything. They'll be like, hello. I'm like, you guys have the worst phone etiquette. And I realized they've never had to really have phone etiquette. So, and then you think about, information, like having to read. I mean, like I was telling them, and I think this is really funny that I relive this stuff to my kids, but talking to them about being in college and having to write papers and do research by actually going to the library and reading books and like, Dewey Decimal System and microfiche and pulling stuff out and reading it, not having the entirety of the world at your fingertips with a computer, with Google, and now with AI. I mean, like with all of this, like you almost had to be like a little bit of like an Indiana Jones type of person to find information. And, you had to go talk to people. And like, it was just, I mean, even when I wanted to start lifting weights, I was calling people on the phone, and ended up going and training with this old power lifter and trying to like call people on the phone because people didn't have emails. There was no social media. I mean, just the fact that, with social media now, watching a lot of guys training, if I had known to the extent at which other people were doing stuff, I would have gone and visited them. It was something I was telling Fries. I was like, dude, if I knew that there was dudes that were this strong or these doing something, I would have gone and visited them, just for the fact that I thought I was doing all this stuff in a silo. I thought nobody was training as hard as we were. And now that I know that there's other people out there doing cool shit, I probably would have gone and investigated them more. But I also think that being self-sufficient and being able to find this information and being able to do this work is therapeutic or cathartic or whatever you want to say in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's kind of like that age of convenience. Like, there's pros and cons to it for sure. And, I think it's up to us, obviously, to maximize the pros and try to minimize the cons. I mean, like you talk about like social media, like it's a great tool for like resources and finding out information, but also like, maybe I could get distracted with the wrong things. That's also a cesspool of a lot of stuff that just isn't beneficial for me, doesn't fill me with the right stuff. Like, we don't always it's not just always consuming with what we eat, but like, consuming with what we hear, consuming with what we see. It's not always good for us as human beings in different aspects, like to consume that type of stuff. And,
it's kind of like, I'm pretty sure you don't read the local sports writers in Indy. Like I unfortunately one time read something, and I remember being like, God, like this is how these people view us, and had like kind of an existential moment where like I realized, I was like, God, this is like, what do these people think we're doing? And like the weird feeling that they cast on us that like these guys don't really want to play, they don't want to be here. I'm like, fuck, dude, everybody gets paid. We're out there trying to kill ourselves. And then realizing some like middle-aged fat dude who's basically hiding in his mom's basement's writing this shit, who's never strapped it up a single day and is just doing it for, to try to create some form of controversy. That was an interesting realization that like not everybody's writing this stuff and for accuracy. They're writing it for, and this is the stuff we get into social media with rage bait. People are saying things, they're doing things just to create rage, which creates, controversy, which just creates this like critical mass of craziness. And like, you look at like what's happening in the political climate and, shit, we're bombing Iran, we're not bombing Iran. I mean, it's like, it's almost overwhelming to the point where if you got other stuff going, it's really easy to get stuck in this stuff and spin out instead of stepping back and realizing like, most of all of this is bullshit and doesn't affect me in a single day, but yet people get so wrapped up in it, like there's somehow this is going to affect their day-to-day life.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, for me, I stopped using social media. I turned it back on recently because obviously trying to answer some messages with like once that article came out, like, there's people that kind of come out and talk about, asking about the Ibogaine, asking about like what kind of things helped you. But before that, like I found myself kind of on a binge on a lot of political stuff, and I was just getting angry for no reason. Like it was everywhere, and obviously the algorithm would keep popping up more stuff and keep feeling that rage. And it's just like, I didn't really realize until like a year later, like it was creating so much like violence in my head. Like I was thinking about all these terrible things I'm gonna do to like the other side or all these terrible people. It's just like a false reality that I was living in my head. Those false perceptions. It's like you said, like this stuff affects me, but I'm letting it affect me by getting angry or any other type of negative emotion with these things, and I can just tune it out. It's just up to me to do it and focus on what matters, be present in the moment.
Yeah, like being a good father, being a good husband, going out and fucking brutalizing people on the football field, which I loved. Like the simplicity of football was amazing. And I don't think that you realize it until you don't play anymore. And I think you got a glimpse of it for the fact that you were going through this and you kind of had to step away from the game. And it's almost as if now you're getting this kind of reboot in a lot of ways where, you're talking about the joy and the excitement to go out and play. I'm jealous. It's exciting. And I think there's so much stigmatism attached with these treatments. I mean, the fact that you had to go to Mexico to get this done, like you think about, where I live here in Austin, it's very, like you said, very hippie. There's like all these different, like we had a guy on the podcast that had like a church up the road where he was doing, I think it was like, Jacob, what did that guy do? Was it like Ibogaine? It was oh yeah, it was yeah. Okay, he was taking people on these like psilocybin mushroom adventures to try to like heal their PTSD, and he had like some like Church of Light up the road. He came on the podcast, so it's always fascinating to see how people are dealing with this stuff. And I think the problem that we run into in this country is that we're just trying to kind of manage everything through better pharmacology. What you're going through is some chemical imbalance in your brain that if we give you just the right mixture of this and this and this, it'll cool it off. And like, I don't think that works in any way. I think all it does is create more and more problems. So, I mean, I'm a much bigger fan of something like you did, which might sound extreme, but sounds way less extreme than taking benzodiazepine every single day and feeling like you're drunk out on the football field.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's just kind of like one of those things. You think about pharmaceuticals, and very much all it does is disassociate. You get all these terrible side effects. Like you're dependent on it. If you skip one day, like things could completely fall off the rails. You have to build up, and then eventually you have to take more and more. And what happens when that stops working? And you're onto something stronger, something a little more potent. And it's just a slippery slope, and that leads to drinking. You're mixing different combinations, and it's just bad. But you think about psychedelics, that heightens everything. It gets the brain working more in unison, heightens all your senses, corrects things. And, talking about neuroplasticity of the brain, you're able to make changes in your life without, I talk about like, how the Ibogaine like opened up my mind. Like it literally did. Like I was no longer rigid inside my actual brain. Like my brain was like flexible now. Like I actually had the ability to think outside the box per se. But yeah, I mean, obviously not people, but big pharma doesn't want people to know about this. Like cost $7,000 for the entire treatment. And like, I've had this much results. Going to Colorado was.
I was going to say that sounds cheap. I was like, $7,000 sounds way cheap. The fact that you didn't have to go, like you just did this one treatment and you did it. I mean, that's feels like pretty money well spent. Whereas, you know, if it was pharmaceuticals, you'd be about 2 weeks in, about $7,000.
Yeah, and you spent years and years and years. Like, this is 5 days, and obviously it's up to you to put in the work afterwards. But it's not like I'm taking Ibogaine and DMT every morning. Like, I don't have to do that, but I do microdose psilocybin. But I've actually, and it's really easy because honestly, the company that I use, like, they send me grow bags, and they're out of Colorado. Grow bags, I had 4 of them, $100 in total for the entire kit. And I grew my own, and I got over 600 microdoses made by myself for $100, and that's a 2-year, maybe 3-year supply. And that's something that, you know, I just do on and off, like, helps me continue to have like clarity, you know, just take it on different days. But it's been great for my overall mood and health, and it's been really beneficial. And, you know, just doing things like that, like, people have the ability to do these things for themselves, grow things that are natural. And, you know, I don't have any bad side effects. Like, when I microdose, like, I have clarity, like, I have like this boost of energy, more in tune, more focused, like, it's just like laser focus. So if I get, like, let's say I'm writing a paper or something like that, like, I can just be focused on that paper, be disconnected from all the outside noise, and just hone in on what I want to hone in on, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like Big Pharma obviously does not want things like this. You can't put a patent on. Ibogaine's a tree root, 5-MeO. They use a synthetic version, but, you know, in its natural form, it's toad venom.
Did like, how does the NFL view this? I mean, I know the NFL is super cunty on all this stuff. I mean, the fact that, and I probably got myself into more trouble than it was worth with the NFL for the mere fact that I remember asking them, like, okay, why are these set of drugs okay and these aren't? Like, why is it that I can go in and get a Toradol shot and this and this and this, and you guys prescribe all these things, but yet, like, you know, I was never a marijuana smoker. Like, I'm not a cannabis guy by any means, but I had a lot of teammates that smoked fucking more pot than a reggae band, and, you know, that to me felt like a better solution than just, you know, going out and handing out, you know, painkillers like breath mints. And, you know, early in my NFL career, you're going to laugh at this, when on away games, when you get on the plane, they used to give out beers. So you'd go on, you get like your lunch, and they give you 2 beers, and then you'd sit down, and then the trainer would come by with like a box full of painkillers, and they would kind of shake them, and they sounded like, we used to call them rattlers because they sound like a rattlesnake. And they'd be like, hey, you need this? And they would just kind of hand them out to guys. And so, like, there was this weird trade where guys would be like, hey, I'll trade you a beer for those painkillers. And so we'd have this, like, I'd end up with like 4 or 5 beers, and then somebody else would get some other stuff. And then some coaches got drunk and got into a fight on the plane, and then they took the beer away. And then, you know, Junior Seau killed himself, and guys started killing themselves, and they started taking all the painkillers away. So I think that things were real fast and loose. And I think because they were fast and loose, they probably had to make some changes. But I mean, I would much rather see some guys, like, if they're dealing with that form of level chronic pain, I would much rather see them take, you know, something like a, you know, cannabis-based product than, you know, the opioid-based stuff. I mean, the fact that I played with a lot of guys that were severely addicted to opiates, and I think those guys today have the most amount of problems.
Yeah, I think everyone's just really looking, you know, for the short-term solution. What's going to get someone feeling better fast? I think it's important to, like, look at long-term, like, how's this going to affect long-term health? Because obviously, like, you know, taking these, like, painkillers and, you know, alcohol, like, you're not just going to become suicidal overnight, but over time, like, you know, the chemical imbalances in your brain start to form, your way of thinking starts to change, and that's a slow death. Versus like something like psychedelics, like, you know, it's taboo right now, but luckily they do have like studies going on in Texas, which is really cool to see. And I hope that it becomes, you know, legal hopefully soon, in however many years. But yeah, I don't think I haven't got any backlash on it yet, although I did get a random drug test right after that article came out with me talking about doing the ibogaine, the 5-MeO. Random drug test.
Was it a steroid one or the street drug test?
I think it was a steroid, but still, it's just kind of like, surely enough, like random drug test. Who knows?
Yeah, they do that. I think it was what was his name? The guy that played for the Browns, the defensive lineman. Was it Miles? I'm gonna fuck his name up.
Miles Garrett.
Yeah, Miles Garrett like posted that shirtless picture, and then they hit him with like 3 back-to-back drug tests. He was like, God, I've been drug tested 3 weeks in a row. I was like, well, look at you, dude. You're like 285, 290, looking jacked like that. Of course they're going to come for you. Like, what'd you think was going to happen?
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, I get it. But, yeah, I mean, I think, if, the NFL's like being serious about like safety, which, it can be questionable at times.
Yeah. They forced you guys to take a vaccine for something that was a respiratory issue. I mean, that was completely unvetted. I mean, and then forced you guys to take it and then didn't say anything and have never come out and been like, yeah, we totally violated all your rights and we forced you to take an experimental drug. Like, I like that blew my mind.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. And, Indianapolis is actually one of the least vaccinated teams at the time. And, I remember when in the thick of it, I think it was my 4th year, they'd always have these 2 guys from the league and they were just patrolling around. You knew exactly who they were because they never left each other's side. I got slapped with some fines, like literally not wearing a mask into the shower. Like, what are we doing? Like,
yeah,
get out there, you can practice, you can breathe on people, but then things off the field become contagious. Like, it doesn't really make any sense. And honestly, like, even now I think about like the safety stuff, like with helmets, like I've tried. So my helmet was in the red this year. I've been wearing it for 7 years, never had a concussion. And this year I had to get a new helmet.
Why?
So I got one.
What was wrong with the helmet? Too heavy?
It didn't pass testing, whatever that means. Which, I mean, you can't sell helmets if things that are safe stay safe too long. So you got to make something that's safe. So I got stuck in. I got put in one of the top 3 helmets, and I got a concussion during OTAs. The guy accidentally hit me in the head, like while I was holding it back for him. I'm like, what are we doing here?
What was different about the helmet? Was it because it was lighter, heavier, smaller?
It was like one of those helmets that has like those memory foams, and it was a shut helmet. And basically, I got hit in the helmet. It's kind of like one of those helmets, outer shell, that's like really flexible and it's supposed to absorb the force. But instead of the force going absorbed from the helmet and dispersing out, it dispersed right into the center of my head. And that's the first time I was like, this is definitely a concussion. I've got my bell rung before,
Sure.
in 10 seconds. But this one is like lingering for a couple weeks.
So you're going to laugh. When I came in the NFL, they told us that you got a concussion when you got knocked unconscious, which was hilarious because I remember like, how am I going to know I got a concussion if I get knocked unconscious? I'm going to be unconscious. It's like, oh, when you wake up from being knocked unconscious, that's how you know you get a concussion. And I was like, oh, okay. So then like 10 years later, they gave that same talk. You got a concussion when anytime you hit, you feel any form of disorientation, your eyes lose focus, you hear ringing in your ears, any form of like like losing orientation, that's a concussion. And I was like, wow, in 10 years, you went from me getting knocked unconscious. So then I remember they were like, early on, they were like, hey, you got a concussion? I'm like, I've never been knocked out. And then at the end, after that definition, you're like, I don't know, 70,000 of these things. Like every single play of my NFL career, probably come back into walking back to the huddle feeling cross-eyed. Like, okay, that's a concussion now.
Yeah, it's just weird every year. Like everything changes, but I'm in a big battle just to get my helmet back right now. I know there's been some other guys that have been complaining, but it's like, it should be a personal decision. Like, obviously I know what's safe for me and, everyone knows themselves better. I don't think anyone wants to playing something that they're actually going to get hurt. And I don't think anyone wants to take anything that's actually going to be detrimental to their health. Like, I think we're all trying to do what's best for our health. And, it's kind of crazy to think that, you're going to have someone else saying, hey, I know what's best for you. Like, no, you don't. You don't know what's best for me.
Especially somebody's never played the game.
Yeah, I trust my wife to know what's good for me. Like, the people that love me and want me around for a long time, I trust them more than once I'm out of the league. Are you going to care about my health anymore? No, I care.
Yeah.
I don't care at all.
Just know 5 years after you retire, so they'll give you they'll give you medical benefits for 5 years. And after that 5 years, you're on your own, which is funny because we have to buy insurance every year, and every year it seems to go up and up and up. It's ridiculous. And I'm always like, man, like that was one of my kind of gripes for the NFL, especially with the PA. I'm like, even if you don't want to give me like lifetime, because if you in baseball, if you play one play in the majors, you get lifetime medical benefits.
Which I think is crazy. You think about the contract stuff too. Like, every other sport is fully guaranteed contract, health benefits. Like, there's definitely a change that needs to be made. And I don't know how that goes about, but I mean, especially with like the intensity of like football in terms of injuries, like, I don't know how many concussions you can get playing like NBA or baseball, like.
Well, I think honestly, the way the owners work, that I think they secretly hope that we all just fall into a hole after you retire. And they're like, oh, like just flush those guys, like send them off to the island of misfit toys. So, I mean, it's kind of every year we go through this with insurance, like trying to get, buy into these different plans and this. And the reason I'm griping about it is I'm going through it right now. But yeah, I mean, it would be nice if like the NFL had something where I could just call up and buy it from them, at least get in on like, whatever the NFL insurance was, I think with Cigna. But yeah, it's an interesting piece. So on a positive note, what's the expectation going into the season? I mean, you got any goals, anything you want to do, anything you're really looking forward to, or just merely just going out there and having fun again?
Honestly, I really just think it's just having fun again. I mean, I think everything just kind of falls in place. Like, obviously, have goals and stuff like that, but I'm just getting better every day. But, it's kind of like I can use my obsessive mind for positive now versus like, a negative, like, focusing on the wrong things. But now I can focus back on being obsessive over my craft and, just getting better every day. But, just going out there, having fun. And, I think one of the things I'll miss when I'm done playing is just like the locker room and being around the guys. And, last year I missed out on that. I wasn't really around the guys because I was locked up in my own head. So I'm just excited just to go out there and play. And at the end of the day, like, I'm going to be the best version of myself that I can be, and whatever happens, happens. And honestly, I don't care what anyone's opinion of how I play is. I mean, I see past that. It's just kind of like, whatever. Everyone's going to have an opinion. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I got to look myself in the mirror and, know that I gave it all that I had. And I just want to be completely free. And I think this experience from last year has allowed me to be free and just enjoy it, because at the end of the day, it's a child's game. No one's going to remember me, and probably even after I play, like a year after, they'll be like, who's that Braden kid? Like, no one's going to remember any of that. So,
don't believe that. Don't believe that at all. You are fucking delusional if you think that. Like, I retired in 2009 and I still had people roll up to me, and I still had people like shoot me things. Like, I just had some guy tag me in some like something from the Eagles. Like, it's pretty interesting. I kind of thought the same thing. I'm like, after I retire, nobody will ever remember this stuff, but it'll be weird that like all of a sudden in the mail, I'll get like some guy randomly. I don't even know how these people get my address. I'll get like a trading card. Hey, can you sign this? And like, I showed it to my kids, and my daughter's like, can I have that? I'm like, no, I'm going to sign it and send it back to this guy. She's like, he'll never know. I'm like, yeah, but like, this dude went through a lot, like, to get him this. And the fact that he has it, like, I'm happy to send it back to him. So I think when you're doing it, it feels like very internal, like I'm doing this. And when you get done, you realize that it like impacts a lot of people that like not in a way that you and I could never imagine. But I definitely agree with you. The fun part of playing football, especially at the level which you do, is actually the offensive line and the group and the people you're playing with, and like the camaraderie and the shit talking. It's the best, to the point where like when you do retire, you're going to have to find something to kind of fill that void a little bit. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I train some of the top jiu-jitsu players in the world, and I train with those guys. And we have a kind of a very similar relationship to what I had in terms of playing offensive line. And it's added something to my life I didn't know I was missing.
No doubt. I mean, it's definitely something I'm going to miss, but luckily I do have a kind of a plan going out of it. Me and my wife, we're gonna homestead in Alabama. We kind of put in a little tiny stack of some apple trees and peach and pear trees and a little plot of land in Alabama. So we're gonna start the orchard. But yeah, I'll be busy full scaling it over there and just kind of using the talents that God gave me in terms of agriculture. Just give back a little bit. But that's something I'm excited about.
How much land?
Definitely don't. Say again.
How much land?
It's her grandfather's land, and it's enough land that I don't know how much it is.
Oh,
but
it's a lot. Then.
The grandfather and her dad, they love that land, and I think they're just excited that I have interest in the land and I want to upkeep it and do some really cool things with it. And they've been really supportive with that. And the grandpa's the one that kind of when he gets excited about something, like he goes all in and. He's been helping out, get a lot of things to help like plant the seeds and stuff like that. And they've been really great about that. And it's exciting to make those memories with our family. It was kind of cool. This past year, we're putting in some trees, and, I got a 17-month-old son at home, and we have the whole family's out there planting the trees, and we had him stick one in a hole, and he was only about, probably like 13 or 14 months at the time. So it was really, really kind of cool to see just everyone kind of coming together around that type of thing.
Man, that I think it's a pretty good plan. I have land out here in Texas, and I have a massive creek that we've been excavating. And some days I really enjoy it, and other days I want to burn it to the ground and go move to a place with no yard. So it's a love-hate relationship, but Texas is also like one of the most inhospitable places I've ever lived. It's like, it's hot, it's miserable. Like this time of year it's a nightmare, but it sounds pretty dope, dude. Well, dude, hey man, I appreciate you coming on the podcast and like sharing the story. I know it's probably not easy or, not fun to relive it, but I definitely appreciate you taking the time to come on, and I'm excited to see you play this year. And even though I'm not a huge Colts fan, I'm going to root for you just for the fact that I think it's an incredible story, and I'm so glad you made it out the other side.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. And, I think just having a story like this, I think it's my duty to kind of tell it, give some hope for other people. I mean, obviously, like when you're going through it, you don't feel like you're ever going to come out the other side. But, there's definitely people that come out the other side. And when I was going through it, like, it didn't seem like it was, but I'm just grateful to be able to tell the story. And cool. Just thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell it.
All right, man. Well, best of luck. Thanks for tuning in to Power Athlete Radio. Hey there, Power Athlete Nation. Big shout out to all the heavy hitters who stuck around till the final whistle. If you've been soaking in the knowledge bombs and epic tales we've been dropping for free, here's your chance to be a game changer. Swing by kofi.com/powerathlete and toss a few bucks our way to keep the podcast fueled and firing on all cylinders. That's fi.com/powerathlete. Your support makes a difference. See ya.